Our topic for the week for some of us is choice and control. So the title of my talk is Reflective Meditation and the Spirit of Recovery. In receptive meditation, and I'll call it what reflective meditation, our approach is more of a receptive approach to meditation. We're learning to be with whatever arises. This is not going to sound new to many of you, but we're really letting the experience of meditation be the meditation. We're often restraining our usual strategies, strategies that I would consider strategies of control, ways to control our experience. And rather than steering the inner world solely towards clarity or calm as a goal, we've opened up the space for whatever comes in to the meditation: restlessness, boredom, confusion, old memories, longings, desires, etc. But what this does, I think, is prepares us to stay with the unfamiliar and to follow threads that we didn't expect to be interesting to us or to be part of meditation, and with content that doesn't normally belong in meditation. And we've heard this from people over the years, that really we can start to hold our practice with less certainty of where it's going. We think we know where the meditation is going to go, and then something often or possibly surprising can happen and take us in a different direction. So this softening of certainty in meditation practice, we hope, will translate to our lives where we're not needing to manage every turn, every task that we're doing out in the world. So one direction that I'd say a receptive meditation practice leads to is experiences where you don't feel so self-centered or self-involved, even if you're the subject matter of what you're thinking about in meditation. It doesn't feel so much like you're the center of the universe. It's almost like we can see at times behind a curtain that other things are going on, and that we're not so in charge of turning the wheel. It reminds me of a quote by J. Garfield. He's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher and author, and he wrote a book called Losing Ourselves, Learning to Live Without a Self. And his quote is, "We are not selves, but rather we're people." This seems obvious, but it's kind of tricky. But we're people, actors playing roles in a variety of overlapping and interrelated plays. The roles are real, but the self that supposedly plays each of the characters is not. So I'm just going to leave us with that bit of mystery right there and go into what I've been reflecting on lately and where it takes me. Is I've been really thinking about my experience in 12-step programs, especially with this topic. I was a very young self when I got into those programs. And the language is very different in the 12-step programs, but the spirit of choice and control feels deeply familiar. So in recovery work, we often acknowledge a kind of powerlessness, especially over desires that spiral out of control. And we admit that we can't do it ourselves. This is often a beginning in many recovery programs. Now, you might not have experience with these programs. You might know people who do. They're kind of, some of the language has creeped into, common everyday speak. But the language in those programs, I can't even remember if I just said this. Oh gosh, had that moment of like, what was I talking about? Yes. The language in those programs is archaic, similar to the archaicness of the Buddhist programs. We don't have a program of Buddhism. Sorry, I'm mixing up my language a little bit here, but the language in both paths can be quite archaic. But there's the invitation to find a path for yourself, just not by yourself, that others are important on the path. And the 12 steps, they adopt an idea of a higher power. And this is not necessarily theistic, especially over the years as the 12-step programs have developed. It's become much more open, it's personal, undefined, and it can really be something just larger than yourself, like not just you. And it's not just like your own isolated will. It could be something like Sangha, nature, mystery, or the Dharma. There's a real, again, it's kind of like we broaden the path. I've seen the 12 steps broadened over the many years I've participated in them. But in my view today, both explore what happens when we stop trying to control everything. When we practice asking for help and kind of admitting of a vulnerability and receiving support. So why this interests me recently is I often find myself reflecting upon the first ennobling or the first noble truth or task, that there is dukkha. Like, what are the causes and conditions for dukkha? Dukkha we define as vulnerability, stress, pain, hurt. There's a lot of translations for it, but I'm often looking for what are the causes and conditions of the dukkha. This is often a reflection after I'm looking at my experiences in my meditation. And contrasting the two paths gave me another round of considering how and why desires are considered a main cause of dukkha. And I thought, oh, and this is new, but not new. You know how you have experiences where you've thought about it many times, but comes up in meditation, and it just gives you just a little bit of a fresh perspective. But I thought, oh, maybe what the Buddha was talking about is desire. It's these out of control desires that the Buddha was talking about as craving, or tanha is the Buddhist word, the thirst that can't be quenched. And it seems so obvious, but I got it in a different way, whether it's food, alcohol, sex, gambling, relationships, that compulsive, out of control craving. It's not so much about the object of that craving. It's the loss of freedom that comes when you get that object. It just keeps you in a cycle and you don't have any choice. And it's one bite, one drink, one more relationship, you're caught in that cycle again. And to me, this feels like a very different cycle from the desires that don't put you into that kind of cyclone. And it gave me just another way to think about the severity of some of the desires that take away your freedom. And today, there's estimates of tens of millions of people, this is an AI search, of tens of millions of people that live with some form of addiction. And there's many people that are walking the edge of addiction, maybe not identifying as addicted, but caught in patterns that they can't shift. And again, this is Buddhist language. We all know that there's patterns that we can't shift, that we feel somewhat addicted to, that keep playing out in our lives, and we really don't feel like we have much choice over them. But some people manage cravings from harm reduction, some from abstinence, and some hold their lives together by sheer willpower and just live with the addictions and just try to ignore them or try to not feed them. And it takes a lot of, I would say, effort to do that. But underneath it, I'm catching a thread that's similar. And this is where we go back to the topic. It seems like there's a struggle between control and letting go, between chaos and choice. That this really seems to be something that feels familiar in both paths. So if you know that struggle yourself, you may or you may not, or if you've been affected by it, by others in your life that have had problems with addiction or identify as addicted, know that the reflective meditation community and practice is a community, is a place that welcomes you. And I'm saying this for us on the call this morning, but I'm also saying this for people who may be listening to this in a podcast and just have found us by accident and really don't know where to go with their meditation practice. Because there's many overlaps and distinctions with the 12 steps in Buddhism, and meditation is one of them. And it's one of the most meaningful connections that we can have in our life, according to me, and according to many other people. But I think that we offer a practice that's a natural fit. And this is why, is because we welcome that struggle into meditation itself, into the heart of the practice. We're not trying to get beyond it or transcend it. This is, again, something most of you are familiar with in our language. But it's another way to be receptive to the life you've been given and the choices that you've made, and to receive the benefits from choosing to turn in and toward your life. I'm going to end here.